Hey there, subscribers, first timers, but more importantly, you. I'm glad you're here because today I wanted to expand upon some points I made in my previous video about the Greatjoy 85mm 1.8 times t2.9 anamorphic lens. Now, this is going to be a long video of me just sharing my stream of consciousness directly to the camera, so feel free to put it on in the background while you get up to something else. However, if you find the information that you're after before the end of the video and you want to click away, it'll be greatly appreciated if you could drop a like before you leave. So in my previous video, I talked about how I think Greatjoy should rebrand. And why is that? Well, it comes from a place of wanting to see Greatjoy succeed. So I have zero connection with the company. The only affiliation I have is that they had a competition for a pre-production sample of the 85mm lens. I entered the competition, I won, I was sent the lens. They asked if I could send them some sample footage, which I did, and they would use that sample footage in the marketing for the lens itself. Other than that, I have no connection with the company. I'm not part of the company. I purchased the 35mm lens and the 50mm lens with my own money. So all my thoughts, feelings, are my own. I have no talking points to cover or anything like that, so I can say whatever I want. I guess I'll start with my background and the different factors that have influenced my opinion. So I've grown up in a smaller part of Australia. I'll consider it rural. I am monolingual. I can only speak English. And I've been involved in video production for 10 years now. So I first started out as an editor for an advertising company. I made over 400 TV commercials for businesses both for my state and nationally. I then moved to a different part of the state. I had a job at a production company that made lifestyle content. I was editor and senior editor for a educational science and cooking show that they did for a couple of years. And then I moved on to be director of photography for a luxury travel show that they did. From there, I left and went into mostly weddings because that's what I enjoy the most. And I also still do events and content for the arts and other local businesses. So I'd rather be doing content that makes me happy. I'm also part of the Australian Cinematographers Society, and I have friends that are still in the industry side of video production who have their own marketing company. So that's my background and what's influenced my opinion. So when I first saw the name Greatjoy as a brand of lenses was when I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw the ad for the 50mm lens. And I was very skeptical, because the name Greatjoy as a brand name for cinema lenses, it kind of sounds like it's a cheap knockoff. And from my experience now with using lenses, I can certainly clarify that they're not cheap knockoff lenses. I think the quality of the products are fantastic. But that was the impression I got. And I imagine there would be a lot of people in a similar situation. But there were people who did buy the lens, and there were people who bought the 35mm lens, and there are people who are buying the 85mm lens. But let's look at those figures because they're a bit concerning. When the 50mm lens campaign wrapped up on Indiegogo, the total sales, now this is in Australian dollars, was 891,336. with a total of 451 backers. That meant that there was an average spend of $1,976 per backer. Then with the 35mm lens, the total sales in Australian dollars was $566,453, with a total of 242 backers, with an average spend of a backer being $2,341. So, what does that show us? Well, it shows us that only about maybe half of the people who bought the 50mm lens came back to buy the 35mm lens. There would be people who bought the 35mm lens and the 50mm lens together as a set, so they're first-time customers. which is why the sales, the total spend per customer, per backer, increased by 18%. But the amount of backers dropped by 47%, and the total sales dropped by 38%. The 85mm lens is still running as a campaign, so I don't want to speculate on those figures, but I imagine the people at Greatjoy are speculating, and they're comparing maybe first day of the campaign launch sales or first week of the campaign launch sales across the different lenses. And they're probably concerned because Greatjoy will have a lot of expensive overheads. They don't just have the cost of materials and the cost of labor involved. They also have the cost of research and development and the cost of high precision optical machinery and the cost of optical simulation software, amongst other usual business expenses. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to keep going, to keep launching new lenses if they can't maintain profitability as a business, which I think is really sad because what they're producing are not only fantastic lenses, but they're producing them for a niche market that I am part of that niche. So I'm glad that they're producing lenses that fulfill my needs as a creator. And you can see in the Facebook page, which has over 2,000 people in it, that a lot of people really love their lenses. And as such, they love the name Greatjoy because a Greatjoy represents to them what they love about the lenses that they get to use now. But I think the Facebook page is a bit of an echo chamber when it comes to people that like the name Greatjoy. And that's great. They're already buying the product, or they're already going to be buying the product. But Greatjoy needs way more people than just the Facebook community that they've fostered to be trusting the brand. Whenever I'm talking to people, whether they're my friends or family or people in the industry, they hear the name Greatjoy and they're instantly skeptical of the quality of the lenses because to them it sounds like a cheap knockoff brand. And there are people in the comment section of the ads that Greatjoy are running saying the same thing. There was even one guy that went so far as to say that it doesn't matter how good the lenses are, he would never be seen on set with lenses with the brand Greatjoy, which I think is really sad because the brand itself, what it wants to represent, I think is really nice. I like the idea that they want their brand to represent lenses that bring joy to people, whether that be the people that are using them or to audiences watching the images. I think that's a great idea. I just don't think the direct translation of the Chinese words to English has worked out for them. I think also the coloring doesn't work so well. Black and orange isn't, I can't think of any examples where that's associated with being a sign of quality. It's also a bit odd. But the name itself, even though people will say that something brings me great joy, this mug of coffee brings me great joy, the lenses give me great joy, calling it Greatjoy just doesn't sound right. And so to people that speak English, at least the people that I surround myself with, it doesn't sound right to them either. And so they're skeptical and they don't trust the brand and they're not prepared to, and people in a similar situation aren't prepared to trust Greatjoy to give them their thousands of dollars for something that they don't trust. So that's why I think Greatjoy needs to rebrand. It's nothing against the people working there. It's nothing against the quality of the product. I think the lenses are fantastic. It's just the naming itself. And I think that can be easily fixed. I have some suggestions, but I'm not saying that these are the right answers. I came up with an idea for one called Emotive. I'll throw it up on the wall there. People in the group have mixed feelings about that one. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I also have some suggestions of what to do next after Greatjoy rebrands. Where does it go from there? Well, I think whatever the new company is called, once it rebrands, it should unify its product line. So I think with the first line of lenses under the new brand, all the lenses have a constant squeeze ratio so that when you change focus, the squeeze doesn't shift. The flares are beautiful and consistent, and maybe introduce a little bit of flare in the 35mm lens. That would be nice, because then you could have the whole lineup having amber flares, blue flares, and clear, or some people call them silver flares. I think that'll be really nice. But I also think you should offer to people who have Greatjoy lenses the opportunity to send their lenses back to the company and have them rehoused in the new branding. And for the rehousing of those lenses that are sent back to be a limited edition. So that way the company is saying thank you to everyone who has brought us this far. And here is this limited edition variation on the lenses that only you can have because you helped us get this far. I think that will be a nice thing to do. And also it means that being a limited edition, it makes it worthwhile to pay the fee, because obviously you wouldn't do this for free, to pay the fee to send them back, because then what you're getting in return is something that is unique. I also have an idea where maybe for special occasions, such as every year on Chinese New Year, the company releases a limited edition range of their lenses. And that could be that this coming Chinese New Year, they release the 35mm, 50mm, 85mm, t2.9, 1.8 times squeeze factor lenses in pink. So the lenses are a bright, bold pink color, which will definitely get them noticed. And the flares are a pink color as well. And then maybe the next year they do green lenses. And so the lineup for that year, the lenses are green and the flares are green. I don't know, this is just ideas. I'm just putting the ideas out there. I also think because the company has developed some pretty unique optical designs, that there's some scope here to do some really some fun combinations. And so I think after they're done with producing different focal lengths for the 1.8 times squeeze factor lenses, they could play around with a line of lenses where not just the lens mount, but the rear group of optical elements can be interchanged. I'm not saying it should be quick and simple, like you should have to sit down in a clean environment and unscrew it and everything. But I think it'll be a really unique product if they're able to have an internal or front element that gives a 1.5 times anamorphic squeeze in different focal lengths. So they have a 35mm, 50mm, 85mm, 24mm, 135mm, I don't know, whatever they do. With a 1.5 times internal or front-loaded squeeze. And then the rear element, 1.33 times anamorphic squeeze. And the combination of those two would mean that the image that reaches the sensor is now a 2 times squeeze. But then also having it so that that rear group can be swapped out for a focal reducer. So now you're taking a full frame image and you're squeezing it down to a super 35 times image. And so now you have the choice of having the full frame at T2.9, or you have super 35 at T2. And so you get that extra stop of light. I think that would be a really interesting prospect, as well as being lenses that will last throughout your career as you change different camera systems, whether it's full frame or super 35, whether it's different lens mounts, the lenses can come with you. So I think then they should have a name for each of the categories of lenses with those different squeeze factors and features. So I've come up with, whether you like this or not, that's up to you. I've come up with the idea that the 1.3 times adapter should be called the catalyst, because it's the thing that introduces people to that anamorphic look. to call the 1.8 times series of lenses the Evoke anamorphic range. And then the 2 times squeeze factor lenses with the interchangeable rear group elements and also interchangeable lens mounts, the Euphoria range. So they're all my thoughts. I just wanted to reiterate that this comes from a place of wanting to see Greatjoy succeed. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Am I on the right track, or am I completely out on a limb here with this take that I'm sharing with you? I don't know when I'm going to post my next video, but if you subscribe and hit the bell notification, you definitely will. See ya.